Finance Administration Economic Development Committee meeting to order. Today is Tuesday, February 18th, 2025. It is 2 p.m. And if everyone could rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, statement of compliance with FOIA. Sarah, has everything been taken care of to make this FOIA compatible or compliant?
Yes, sir, it has.
All right, I'd ask for someone to approve our agenda for today.
I'll make the motion.
Second. Derek, thank you. First and second, is there any objection to that? Seeing no objection, it'll be approved without objection. Let's move on then to number 5, and I'd ask for someone to approve our minutes from January 27th, 2025.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Is there a second, please?
I'll second it.
Ms. Tabernick, and any discussion? Seeing no discussion, we will then approve those without objection, and seeing no objection, they have been approved. And we now will open the floor up for public comment. Is there anyone that we've got that has come to speak before our committee?
No, sir.
All right, there's no one online as well, so again, no public comment today. So then let's move on to our Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Harriet, and she's coming up to discuss our fiscal year 2024 annual comprehensive financial report. Ms. Harriet.
Hi. So today we have David Irwin from Malden & Jenkins. He has spent his entire 21 years auditing state and local governments. Malden & Jenkins audits approximately 750 governments throughout the country, the majority of which are in Georgia and South Carolina. He is from Macon, so he had a nice little drive coming in today. They audit nearly half the counties in South Carolina and have significant presence here in the Low Country, specifically in Beaufort, where they do the city of Beaufort, town of Hilton Head, city of Bluffton, and Beaufort County School District, as well as us. So without further ado, Mr. Irwin.
Right. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you all are doing well.
Good afternoon.
If you slide over a little further, then Joe might be able to see it too.
Okay. Excuse me.
I don't know why it's blurry.
I'm glad it isn't up to me.
It's just me.
Yeah.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah, I don't work there. All right, well, again, good afternoon. Hope you all are doing well. Again, my name is David Irwin, and I'm with Malden Jenkins. I was the partner who oversaw this year's audit of the county's financial statements, as Peggy stated. And I certainly appreciate the opportunity to be here with you all this afternoon to discuss the results of this year's audit. There we go. All right, the purpose of today's presentation is to provide you all an overview of our independent auditor's report, talk about the results of the two compliance reports that we issue in conjunction with the audit, hit a few of the financial statement highlights, discuss some information that the auditing standards requires that we communicate to you all, and then last but certainly not least, to answer any questions that you all may have. Now, the financial statements themselves are the responsibility of management and members of council. As your independent external auditors, our responsibility is to issue an opinion on these statements. We conduct our audit in accordance with governmental auditing standards and generally accepted auditing standards. And I'm happy to say that we're issuing a clean or unmodified opinion on this year's report. Again, this is what you want. This is the highest level of assurance that we can provide your external auditor. What this means is that, in our opinion, the financial statements are considered to be fairly presented in all material respects in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Again, as I mentioned, as part of the audit, there are two compliance reports that we also issue. The first of which is the single audit report. Again, a single audit is a compliance audit that is required when an entity has over $750,000 of federal expenditures during the year. The county had around $18 million of federal expenditures in FY24, and this resulted in us having a single audit on 3 major programs. As was the case with the financial audit, we are issuing a clean or unmodified opinion on the single audit as well. The second compliance report is the Yellow Book report. This is a report on the county's internal controls and your compliance with various laws and regulations. And I'm happy to say that we do not have any audit findings reported to you all this year, meaning we noted no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in the county's internal controls during our audit. And as I mentioned you all before, you all are obviously a large county. There's significant financial activity for which you all have to account for. In addition, with all the new accounting standards and changes that are required each year, and really just how complex a financial reporting process has become, it makes it all the more impressive to be able to present to you an audit that not only has a clean opinion, but also no audit findings. So again, that's certainly something you all should be proud of. And to me, it's really a testament to the hard work done by your staff. When the government has significant turnover, which you all have had over the past several years, it's not unusual to see some things slip through the cracks. I's not being dotted, T's not being crossed, or there to be a delay in the audit getting done. Your audit is, you all have a June 30 year end. It's required to be submitted to the county by 12/31. We didn't see any of that this year. Again, that's really a testament to the leadership. Mike Pinky, the entire finance department, both current and who have subsequently left, they all did a really good job this year, as always. They were very accommodating to our audit team, worked hard to get us all the information that we needed in order to get the audit finalized by the 12/31 deadline. So again, I just want to thank them for all their hard work this year. Now for a brief overview of the financial statements. Again, you all prepare what is called an annual comprehensive financial report, otherwise known as an ACFR. An ACFR requires the inclusion of additional information that goes above and beyond the basic financial reporting requirements. This document is submitted annually to the Government Finance Officer Association, otherwise known as the GFOA, where they put it through a pretty stringent review process. Not only their professional staff, but they also have a special review committee that looks at this report. And when they look at the county's ACFR, their goal is not to assess the financial health of the county. What they want to do is make sure that the necessary information is in this document so the readers of your financial statements can do so themselves. And through this review, the GFOA has once again awarded the county the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting for FY23, and that certificate is included in this year's report. And as you can see at the bottom of the slide, this is the 15th year in a row that the county has received the certificate. So congratulations to you all on that. Again, this is an impressive document, and it's certainly one that you all should be proud of. As you look through this report, as you look through your ACFR, one section I always like to point out is the management discussion analysis, otherwise known as the MD&A. It's at the beginning of the report. It's right after our audit opinion. I would strongly encourage everyone to read the MD&A. And the purpose of the MD&A is really just to make it easier for the broader audience to use and better understand your financial statements. And it does this by providing a narrative explanation of the financial statements from management's perspective. So, if you have any questions about any fluctuations in any financial activity, anything unique or unusual that occurred during the year, oftentimes you can find your answer within the MD&A. In addition, there's quite a bit of comparative information in this section. So you have financial information for not only FY24, but also FY23. That adds a lot of value to the reader in my mind. It's a lot easier to understand the current year activity when you have those prior year numbers there for comparative purposes. So, when you look at your documents, your ACFR is over 220 pages. So the MD&A does a really good job of consolidating that information and in providing the reader with an analytical overview of the financial statements. So again, if you can, I would strongly encourage everyone to read the MD&A. The county's basic financial statements are broken down into three components. The first of which are your government-wide statements. The government-wide statements, they provide a broad view of the county's operations in a manner similar to what you would see in a private sector business. Under this section, all the county's funds are combined into two columns. Depending on the nature of the fund, you have a column for your governmental activities, and you also have a separate column for your business type activities. But we have a slide here that summarizes the county's financial activity for the year from the government-wide perspective. But as you can see, the county ended the year with assets and deferred outflows of resources of around 1.2 billion. Of that amount, approximately 647 million are your capital assets, net of accumulated appreciation. When I talk about capital assets, that's the land, buildings, machinery, equipment, infrastructure, et cetera, that's owned by the county. You all also had around 490 million in cash and investments as of year end. Looking at your liabilities and deferred inflows, they were around 363 million. Of that amount, around 286 million are long-term in nature. I mean, they're not due within the next fiscal year. Your revenues were around 380 million. That was an increase of approximately $84 million compared to FY23. The majority of this increase pertains to the increase in your sales tax projects fund. Expenses were just under 250 million. That's actually a decrease of around $4 million compared to prior year. And this resulted in an ending net position of approximately $833 million, which is an increase of 130 million for the year. So all in all, a really strong year for the county from an entity-wide perspective. You all saw about a 28% increase in revenues while expenses actually decreased. And that's something you don't often see. Most of the time when you have an increase in revenues, you have a corresponding increase in expenses. So, the end result was around an 18% increase in your net position. So overall, the county has a strong balance sheet. It's in good liquid financial position and is in really good shape overall financially. The second component of your financial statements are the fund level statements. Again, this is what you all typically see throughout the year. This component focuses on individual parts of the county and reports the operations in more detail than that of the entity-wide. But of all of the funds that the county has, if I'm in your shoes, my primary focus is general fund. Again, the general fund is the main operating fund of the county, and it's where the majority of your revenues are received and funds expended. But we have a chart here that shows the general fund's revenues for the year. Again, this is just for the general fund, but total revenues around $184 million. That's around a $14 million increase compared to FY23. Again, as you can see on this chart, obviously the vast majority of the general fund's revenues are derived from property taxes, which total around 129 million. And that represented about 70% of the total revenues of the general fund. A couple other significant sources of revenue worth mentioning: charges for services around 15.5 million, and you all had intergovernmental revenue of around 11.3 million for the year. This next chart shows the general fund's expenditures for the year by function. Total expenditures around 168 million. That's a decrease of about 5.6 million compared to prior year. Again, good to see your revenues increased, your expenses decreased. But as you would expect, public safety, general government represent the majority of these expenditures. Public safety was around $53 million, and that accounted for around 32% of the general fund's total expenditures. General government expenditures were approximately $69 million for the year. So in total, the general fund's fund balance increased by about 12.7 million for an ending balance of 95.2 million. And this next chart shows the fund balance history of the general fund over the past 5 years. Charts like this are always interesting. It's always interesting to look back on where you were compared to where things currently stand. And as you can see on this chart, you all have done a great job of increasing your fund balance. It's increased by approximately 77% over the past 5 years. 2020 was obviously a unique year due to COVID. But with everything that's gone on over the past 5 years and the economic uncertainty that's followed it, it's impressive to see how you all have consistently been able to stay within budget and continue to increase your fund balance. So again, that's certainly something that the council, management, really everyone involved with the county should not only be proud of, but commended for. And as I mentioned before, one thing I always like to point out and remind people is that fund balance isn't what you all have in the form of cash for discretionary spending. Fund balance is merely the difference between assets and liabilities, only a portion of which is cash on hand. Additionally, another thing to keep in mind, the general fund incurs expenditures of approximately $14 million per month. So you all ended the end of the year, which again, you all have a June 30 year end. So you ended the fiscal year with an unassigned fund balance equal to around 5 months worth of operating expenditures. And again, with you all having a June 30 year end, it's good to see that the county has a fund balance sufficient enough to cover expenditures during the months of July through October, or even July through November for that matter. And, not to belabor the point, but, a question I'm often asked is, as long as we're able to pay our current obligations, what's the benefit of having a strong fund balance? And, there's several reasons for this, one of which I just mentioned. Property taxes represent a significant portion of your revenue, and they're cyclical in nature. It's not something you're getting over, equally over a 12-month period of time. So having that strong fund balance as of June 30, like I said, helps get you through the months of July through November when your revenues are lower than they are at other times of the year. Other reasons to cover significant emergencies and unanticipated expenditures. It provides you all the opportunity for discretionary spending. There's potential for better interest rates when you go out to the market, which would save you money. And again, it's uncertain. I mean, it provides uncertainty in uncertain economic times. And again, that's something we've all seen. From the financial crisis back in 2008 to the global pandemic in 2020, to weather-related issues that we sometimes unfortunately have to deal with being a coastal community. If I'm in your shoes, it's nice to see that you all have a strong fund balance to withstand those events. So again, that's certainly something that you all should be proud of. A few other funds I want to briefly mention are your 4 enterprise funds, which again are your stormwater, your Beaufort Executive Airport, the Hilton Head Island Airport, and the Solid Waste and Recycling Fund. Again, enterprise funds are used to account for operations in a manner similar to that of a private sector business. The goal of these funds are to be self-sufficient and to generate sufficient operating revenues to cover their operating expenses. And again, this chart shows the revenues, the operating revenues and expenses for these funds this year. With the exception of the Solid Waste Fund, as you can see, the remaining 3 funds all generated operating income this year. So again, that's certainly something you want to see out of your enterprise fund. Solid Waste Fund had a slight operating loss this year. It was a little over $500,000.
That's what we talked about. Yeah.
But that loss was offset by non-operating revenues and transfers in from other funds. So even though that fund had a slight operating loss, all 4 of these funds increased their net position during the year. Again, one final item just to discuss with you all is, as I mentioned earlier, certain information the auditing standards require that we communicate. Again, you all are receiving a clean or unmodified opinion. We had no audit findings. We received full cooperation from management staff. There were no significant issues discussed with management that would have affected the financial statements. There were no uncorrected misstatements. And again, we are independent of the county as required by government auditing standards. And with that concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Again, as you can see, when you look at your financial statements, there's a lot of information in that report. What I tried to do is just hit the highlights of what I think is the most important to you all. But I do want to thank your staff again for all their assistance this year. And we certainly appreciate the opportunity to be of service to you all, and look forward to working in the future.
Thank you.
Good. Any questions for Mr. Irwin? And I know you've come before us many times before, Mr. Irwin. You're a little more gray now than you were in the past. So I'm not sure what is. You brought that on, but so am I. Actually, I have less than it. But any questions for Mr. Irwin?
I'd like to see what you say about me.
Yes. Wait till you're not around.
That comment out of the minutes.
But no, yeah, and again, our staff has done a great job, so I want to thank them. And again, it's good to have y'all come back and obviously give these reports, because it kind of solidifies what we know. And Hannah, I think it's something we need to get to the Beaufort Gazette and the Island Packets. They can put on their last page of the paper. But,
I'd be lucky if they even put it in there. It's too positive.
It's too positive, right?
but yeah, so we, as
Exciting.
Mr. was mentioned, every year we've gotten this credentials, and but again, we're always under the scrutiny of everybody. So again, just kind of shows what we're doing. So again, anyone else that would like to comments regarding the presentation, or for Mr. Irwin? David, thank you for coming again. We appreciate that. Look forward to having you again sometime in the near future.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Right back to making. you got the?
Yeah.
Sorry. No, you're good. While you're pulling it up, as Mr. Irwin mentioned, we have a pretty healthy fund balance, and we do have two ordinances that require us to keep 30% aside in our fund balance for emergency, 17% specifically for hurricane season as well. So 28.5 million of our fund balance we do not touch per ordinances that were passed in the past, or approved in the past, sorry. So other than that, we have some plans to draw down some of those funds because it is unusually high. And most of you, after our budget workshop, I reiterated the comment about solid waste, which is why we're gonna bring it back into the general fund for the upcoming budget year.
I only see your AIS. Did you email it?
It was in the same email as the auditor's presentation.
Got it. And you just tell me next.
Oh, this one doesn't work, okay. Next. So we're gonna do a quick update on the general fund. I too report just like he does with the general fund revenues. There we go. Revenues per function. So as you can see, ad valorem has increased. This is since our last finance committee. We went from 59%, if I remember correctly, to 85%. So our revenues are coming in, ad valorem's coming in fairly quickly, and we're getting closer to our projected budget for the year. Next. Expenditures, we're still trending around 56%. Obviously, we've still got a little more than 6 months to go, Federal Week as it is. So we're looking pretty good. If you notice, all the percentages to the right are 50 and above. So we're expending just as we initially intended to do in the budget. And then I think the last one is a PDF. This is just your budget transfer report that we do at every finance committee. This month we had 4 transfers, and as you can see, they're fairly small. Human Services had a unexpected printer issue. Passive Parks had a conference that they needed to register for. Parks and Rec had umpire referee costs for tournaments and leagues. Sorry, that was very small. And then Veterans Affairs had a few things for a skyboat. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that, Audra. A membership for one of their organizations. And that is it for the budget transfer report for the month of January. That's it for me. Any questions?
Any questions for Ms. Harriet? All right, seeing no questions, thank you, Pinky. You always do a great job, appreciate that.
Thank you.
Let's move on then, and we're up to number 9 on our agenda. It's resolution authorizing the county administrator to execute an amendment to an intergovernmental agreement regarding affordable housing. And
Hello.
Hank,
I'm not on there, but
We're not-
I'm gonna play MC because we have multiple subject matter experts, so I'm just gonna kind of kick it off that,
Thank
you know,
you.
we've been working through this amendment to the IGA. And so there, Claude Hicks and Dick Stewart are here from the Housing Trust to talk a little bit about that. And then Dylan has worked through all of that to make sure that he can answer any of your questions about any substantive changes to the document.
thank you, Hank.
You want your- Is
Mr. Stewart, thank you for coming, and we appreciate all you do. You seem to help us out in quite a few things, so thank you for
That's
your
very
time.
kind of you. And I was about to thank you for your services and for the activities you folks must be engaged in. I'm pleased to report that your chance of boredom is very remote. That's good. I recall when I came on county council, we had just hired Gary Kubik, and on a February day like this, Gary was from Youngstown, Ohio, and used to complain that we thought we had problems. He had 7 miles of closed steel mills with houses surrounding them that could not be sold because even if people had mortgaged 15 or 20 years in, the value of the houses were not sufficient to sell them and pay off the mortgage. And one of those was my dad, which sort of was the punctuation point he was getting to the whole time. So he went down to Waterfront Park, took some photos, and sent the blue sky and the blue water pictures back to Ohio. And I'm pleased to say over the following decade or so, a significant number of his relatives and friends ended up moving. Yeah, we're glad they're here. I'm your chairman for the board with Beaufort Jasper Housing Trust Incorporated. I was on the advisory board as a representative of the city of Beaufort. I'm now on the board of the nonprofit as a representative of the city of Beaufort. I'm here to talk to you a little bit about the history of this organization. And I'm going to talk to you mostly about the Azakura Robinson consulting report that recommended the formation of the nonprofit. And I want to tell you that I am not a marketing person, but whoever chose the name Azakura Robinson were either looking for immortality or a distinctly different challenge for people trying to Google it. So in August of 21, the Azakura Robinson report came out, and that was delivered to you and the other governing bodies, and the implementation plan which was produced was funded by you, Jasper County, the city of Beaufort, town of Bluffton, city of Hardyville, town of Hilton Head Island, town of Port Royal, and the town of Yamasee. Participating in that, if you can get to the next page, included from the funding jurisdictions plus Beaufort Memorial Hospital as a major employer, Compass Custom Homes, Beaufort Jasper County Realtors, Hilton Head Area Realtors, Hardyville Attainable Housing Task Force, and the Jasper County Neighbors United. Then if you'll look to the next page, these plans were reviewed by that group as part of their efforts was the Beaufort Housing Needs Assessment from 2018, Jasper's Journey Comprehensive Plan from 2018, the Town of Hilton Head Island Workforce Housing Strategic Plan from 2019, the Hardyville Housing Task Force report from 2019, the Beaufort Low Country Regional Commission Plan from 2016 to 2020, interviews with stakeholders, and the Housing Needs Assessment for Jasper County as far back as 2008, and the South Carolina Qualified Action Plan 2021. Qualified Action Plan is a QAP, and when Claude comes up in a few minutes, he knows all about all of that stuff, so he's going to tell you the great things happened since he came in the middle of last year. I'm here to talk about the things that occurred before that and tell you sort of how we got here. If you go to the next page, this is the William Mesher Local Housing Trust Fund Enabling Act. Just as you heard about your general fund and your enterprise funds when your accountants gave their reports a few minutes ago, this is a fund. It's not an entity. It doesn't have a governing body per se. It's a fund. Unlike those, though, this fund was created by contributions from 7 entities, and it was managed to a degree by an advisory board with a fiscal agent in the form of Community Works. The interesting things about this is it provides the funds to be put into this can only be used for affordable housing and only for people earning less than 60% of the area median income. That limitation meant that the fund could not address workforce housing needs in our regions. Workforce housing is typically defined as residents earning 80% or more of AMI. That was a significant oversight, and I will tell you that the Meacher Fund, when it was first put together, had this at 50%, and it had already changed to 60% by the time we got involved and you created this position. The implementation plan recommends that a nonprofit corporation be formed to address both workforce and affordable housing concerns. And Claude will tell you about some of the great achievements we've had during his leadership and Jennifer's leadership because we have that nonprofit in place. Beaufort Jasper Housing Trust, Inc. is that nonprofit. Some folks refer to it as the trust, some refer to it as the trust fund. I think that's been a little bit of the confusion that's contributed to the reason we're here today. So if you look at the housing trust, I'm going to go from left to right. In August 2021, Azakura Robinson delivered that plan. Between 21 and 22, the founding parties, of which you are one, and Soloco, which is a board that's not a legal entity but has significant influence, reached an agreement to form a regional housing trust fund. I'm having eye surgery next week, so I'm reading carefully here. Each founding member of Soloco select a person to be a member of representative on that fund advisory board, and that was me for the city of Beaufort. Then on January 13th of 2023, Beaufort County executed an agreement with Greenville-based Community Works to be the fiscal agent for the fund. Community Works paid 10% of the contribution, a little over $200,000 that year. And they're to be paid 10% of the additional funding coming in if the agreement is renewed. Some of us were very pleased when Senator Davis and his leadership were able to find a $3 million grant and bring that to the housing needs here because of the cooperation of you and the other parties that helped fund this. We were a little concerned that if 10%, $300,000 was taken out of that and given it to somebody else to manage it, that might not be as important to us as if we could have the $300,000 to help with the project. That led to a little concern. The other portion, which we showed up later, is that January 13th of that year happened to be exactly 1 week after the date that you established where you were asking the Greenville law firm to look into purchasing. Not our purview. We didn't look into it. We didn't ask, but we didn't want to get involved in it either because it wasn't consistent with our mission regarding housing. Then in October of that year, Community Works had gone through some changes. Their leadership had resigned and retired. A new person was on board. And they determined that we were making great progress, didn't need them anymore, and they needed to focus their attention to the upstate. And so they decided they wanted to resign from the contract when it expired. They sent notice to the county. They let us know. We were happy with doing that because we had already been created as a fully formed 501c3 with a full operation of the board. Now, I want to mention to you what the responsibility of the board is, and I'll tell you why in a second. As a director on this board, my responsibility, director's primary responsibility to a nonprofit, is to exercise oversight and fiduciary duty by ensuring the organization operates in alignment with its mission, utilize prudent financial management, making strategic decisions, and upholding ethical practice while adhering to legal compliance, all while prioritizing the organization's long-term sustainability and impact on the community. Our board does that. In the Azakura Robinson report, it suggested we add some additional board members with expertise in real estate, law, and finance. We have done that, bankers, lawyers, and a real estate broker. The reason I mention this to you is that in January of 24, when Community Works moved away from being our contract terminated between Beaufort County and Community Works, we received a demand letter to take the funds that the county and the other municipalities had contributed to housing and give it back to the counties to be our fiscal agent. Given what was going on in the newspapers, the other sorts of things that we'd all read about, the stuff that was going on, and the fact that we felt like we were doing a great job controlling it, I felt that if I were to actually do that, I would be forced to resign because of my duties here prior to allowing that to go forward. Now, I'm not suggesting they would have, but I am suggesting that the other directors would have to go through making that same decision. I spoke with the city of Beaufort, asked them what they wanted to do, and they said they'd rather the funds not be given back to the county, but still maintained inside the organization. So what we did is we created a new account. We took those funds and put them in that new account and said, we're not going to touch those funds until this issue is resolved with the county. So if you've heard any rumors about us spending money on frivolous activity stuff, not a penny of that has happened. And those funds, the only thing that's been withdrawn from those funds was a $500,000 investment in a development of housing that's going on over here on Boundary Street, which was recommended by Community Works and which we partnered with Community Works to make happen. So because of that confusion about who should be whether a fiscal agent was needed or not, it's taken some time to get an agreement that worked for everybody here. I just want to mention to you that we in the Housing Trust, in this nonprofit, we're not parties to the IGA. The parties are you and the other governments. We'd love for you to do that. We certainly hope we can count on you to be our continuing partners. As Claude will tell you, there's great reason to be optimistic we're beginning to make a dent into this crisis for housing. Claude, I'm happy to answer any questions now or at any time.
Thank you, Dick, and thank you for the opportunity to talk about Beaufort Jasper Housing Trust and what we have done since I've been here, 1st of April of last year. As Dick very eloquently stated, this is the housing trust. One of the reasons that Senator Davis was successful in getting money from the state is that he told his colleagues that this model, a regional model, was the reason that this was going to work. That everybody made a realization that they couldn't do this by themselves, but together they could tackle the issues surrounding housing, specifically workforce housing and affordable housing. Our mission is very, very simple. We create and preserve workforce and affordable housing. That is it. That's all we do. I want to point out a couple of things that you're likely to hear as you all listen to the trust, listen to issues around housing. First is area median income. And that HUD does that. They look at an area, they compilate what is the median income of the area. It changes every year as dynamics of an area change every year. Workforce housing, it's really defined as AMI that goes up to 120%. Why is this important? It's important because in a place like Hilton, you have to be able to go up to 120% to take advantage of the high rent schedules there, but also the higher cost of just doing business on Hilton. Affordable housing is most commonly referred to as 60% of AMI or below. Carrington Manor up on Boundary Street is a senior affordable housing development whose cap is at 60% of AMI. They are truly looking for those with the deepest need in the community. You'll hear also the term 30% affordability threshold. All of the gurus and the powers that be up in Washington and in state and local governments have determined that a single family should not pay more than 30% of their income in rent or mortgage payment. Why is that important? When they look at what a family earns, if they go beyond 30%, they begin to tap into food not so good, transportation issues, childcare issues. All of those begin to diminish as their rent goes higher as a percentage of their annual income. So let's take a look at Beaufort and Jasper counties where we serve. If you look at 100% of median family income, that's $106,000. Under 30% AMI, they can only afford $26.60 in monthly rent or house payment. 3-bedroom houses, 3-bedroom apartments are cresting $3,000 a month. So you can already see that they're already behind on the home side, the home purchase side. Number one, there's no stock. But number two, Beaufort in the last 60 days overtook Hilton Head as the most expensive place in Beaufort and Jasper County. The average house price here is $556,000 as of the last 30 days. The Federal Reserve takes a look at an area and tries to determine, okay, if you have a median price house, not a mansion, not something on the lower end, just a median priced house, how many families could buy that house without going over 30% of their income? In the last 21 years, that number is 0 in Beaufort and Jasper counties. Not one house, not one apartment. So this, go back one second. This slide was used by the Federal Reserve in a symposium that was attended by some of you here in this room. You could hear a pin drop when she presented this slide, because what she said was, we are one of the very few places in the United States where this has happened for 21 years. So you'll see that the need for affordable workforce housing is never greater than it is right now. So what have we been doing? We have 3 platforms that we adopted. One is creation of workforce and affordable housing. The second is home repair, and the third is home buyer assistance. Those 3 platforms alone have generated $2 million by the end of December last year of commitments or dollars out into the marketplace by Beaufort Jasper Housing Trust. We sent out requests for proposals, requests for qualifications. We had 14 responses. These are the 8 that we chose. All these grantees work both in Beaufort and Jasper counties. You'll see names that you recognize. Beaufort Memorial, they had a first-time home buyers program. We participated in that. Habitat for Humanity, out in Hardyville, they built 10 really nice townhomes. Beaufort Jasper Housing Trust provided all of the first-time home buyers assistance for all 10 families, which would allow them to move into the very first place that they've ever owned. Deep Well has been a strong advocate. They had their money ready to spend, and they spent it within 60 days of receiving the allocation from us. That's how big the need is for them. So we put $500,000 into Carrington Manor. That's 64 new affordable units for some years. That should be ready to go by the end of this year, we hope. $619,000 in grant funding for home repairs. We're preserving 98 affordable homes in the region. This home repair issue is probably the thing that rings the phone the most. People who are in desperate need of repairs. We went really looking for, not thinking that this was going to be a big deal, but it became a huge deal. People were coming from everywhere saying that they needed help to create a safe and quality home. $364,000 in grant funding for home buyer assistance. We've created 12 new homeowners to date. We're projecting 42 total. We got an additional $3 million, as Dick mentioned, in additional funding from the state of South Carolina. And then you all participated in a grant, $600,000 to CCDC. We're very happy to tell you, and you asked us to be the fiscal agent for those funds. We're very happy to tell you that CCDC complied with everything, and they funded the acquisition of 21 townhomes. They used the money quickly, but they used your money to leverage other people's money. So they took your $600,000 and said, we've got this, who else will help us? Novan Hospital came up with $1 million. Several other entities came up with either low interest loans or grants. So your $600,000 was instrumental in helping them gather the rest of their money to make those acquisitions. What's next?
Clive, back on that last slide, were those 98 homes with that 619,000 separate apart from Low Country Council of Governments grants?
Yes.
Yes. What's next? We have been approved as a qualified sponsor for the South Carolina Housing Trust Fund. That is strictly for home repairs. It's a $20 million fund that has been used very little until this year. We had to not only qualify as an organization, but Jennifer and I had to go to an environmental class that lasted all day and told us more about environmental stuff than we ever wanted to know. I think we are the only ones in Beaufort and Jasper County that have the qualification for the repair fund itself and the environmental qualification. What does that do? It allows us to look at houses that are older than 1978. We're developing a partnership with the city of Beaufort. They have recognized the need for home repair. We are doing a matching fund for them. We're going in March for the city to talk about how this is going to work. We're going to be not only the fiscal agent, but we're going to be the operating agent for that fund.
Well, with the city, they're just providing funds, basically. You're gonna administer it and identify the homes for an
Yes.
application review.
We put together a program and presented to them, and that'll be discussed in the March 11th
Be
meeting.
based on what income, 60%?
60% or less.
Great.
You gotta be a resident in the city of Beaufort,
You have to own your home.
have to own your home, your taxes have to be paid. All of the things that you see in most normal home repair programs. And the person living there has to be owner occupied, can't be a renter. We are reviewing potential land acquisition sites with developers. Two things happened when I got here. One was all the investors that I've worked with over the last 30 years said, what are you doing in Beaufort, South Carolina? Why are you there? And what are the possibilities of our putting money in South Carolina, in particular, in Beaufort and Jasper counties? Second thing that happened was developers said, oh wait, there's somebody here with some experience. Let me go talk to him and see how the trust can help me. We have been inundated with developers with all kinds of projects, all kinds of things we're looking at, primarily around workforce housing, how we can get young families to stay here, how we can get young families to be able to live here. So it's a huge issue, but they keep on coming. I'm happy to tell you that in our meeting last week with JPMorgan Chase, they announced that they are expanding their branch footprint into South Carolina, in particular in Beaufort. Why is that good? It's always good to have a big bank, but JPMorgan Chase also has a foundation. That foundation will not participate in anything unless it has a branch in the area.
Say that again, JP Morgan, what? I know they have a foundation.
They have a foundation, they won't participate unless they have a branch in the area.
A branch?
Branch.
A branch of the bank.
Yeah, I
Branch of
know,
the bank.
I know.
So they are going to open branches. Beaufort is already on their schedule for opening branches. For those of you who might recognize the term Community Relocation Act, or Reinvestment Act rather, the head of Chase's CRA lives in Hilton Head. She commutes 5 days a week all over the country, but she's attached to Hilton Head, attached to this area, wants to stay here for the rest of her life.
So is the branch coming to Beaufort City or Beaufort County?
Not sure. She just said Beaufort is on our schedule. They've already opened an office in Charleston, and recognize that there's huge opportunities here. And we are facilitating a solutions forum, much like the symposium that some of you went to recently, but we have a different question. We're going to ask planners, city officials, county officials, developers, contractors, engineers, architects to come sit at a table and talk about how can we remove some of the obstacles that everybody says are out there as impediments to building workforce housing. So we hope to have that up and rolling. We'll invite everyone, it'll be open to the public. We'll invite everyone who wants to come and talk about that subject. The development of workforce and affordable housing has to be intentional. Everyone would like to think that this is going to be resolved in Washington. Right now, I could not tell you what the policy is of this administration, other than last week the president said he wanted to support affordable housing. Senator Scott is a big proponent of opportunity zones. And the new Secretary of HUD, Mr. Turner, is also a proponent and an advocate for opportunity zones as well. So we hope that brings some good news to this area. We need to look at different ways to approach housing. And it's going to require public-private partnerships. It's going to require the state, regions, the feds, private industry. Private partnerships can bring a lot of capital to the area, but they don't necessarily know the area. So public-private partnership is just that. It's those people who live in the area who say, we understand what happens here, to merge together with funding that can come from an investor who wants to see a return on their investment. Who are we really looking for? Who are we really trying to attract? Is all of these and more really family-oriented, professional-oriented, young people-oriented individuals who need to be here. We need to have teachers. We need to have service workers. We need to have hospital staff. We need to have people to drive the bus to school back and forth. We need to have people to serve in the restaurants. If you all really think about it, none of those people can really afford to live here. They either commute, or they double up, or sometimes triple up to be able to afford an apartment. We have adopted a saying, no housing equals no workers, equals no economic development, equals no community. The representative of the Fed told us that the state of Maryland is now what they characterize as a dying state. There's more people leaving than there are coming in. Part of this was the failure to recognize that as housing got more expensive in Baltimore and in the urban areas of Maryland, all of those people left and they never came back. They got jobs somewhere else. We are very grateful for your participation with us. We're very grateful for your partnership. We look forward to more good things in the future. So they certainly are coming through our door on a daily basis. And happy to answer any questions you might have.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. When did the Federal Reserve come here with that statement about the housing? When did they come out with that statement?
2 months ago.
2 months ago.
2 months ago they were here? Were they here?
It was a symposium.
It was
Oh, where was it?
Dr. Lisa Ulrich.
Laura.
Oh, Laura.
Where was that?
TCO.
Oh, TCO. Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't know.
November 12th.
Okay, the opportunity zone. There's very few opportunity zones here, right? In Beaufort County? I understand there's like only one in Hilton Head.
So where Carrington Manor is being built now on Boundary, that is an opportunity zone.
Near the Holiday Inn.
Okay, yeah, but when I'm asking approximately like how many opportunity zones do we have in Beaufort County?
I think only a handful.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
However,
Yeah.
those change all the time.
Oh, they do?
Yes, they create new opportunity zones all the time. They change opportunity zones as the structure, financial structure around a certain area changes. Then it may no longer qualify as an opportunity zone. So it changes all the time. Washington is looking at it all the time. I think what Senator Scott wants to do
Right.
is to say, let's expand the margins for an opportunity zone. Let's look at this as the creation of workforce and affordable housing as opposed to an opportunity zone whereby somebody can make an additional return on their investment. So I think that's the way he's headed. He says he's still very supportive of opportunity zones. The new Secretary of HUD is as well. He was part of Senator Scott's team that created the opportunity zones. So our expectation would be that this area would get more, but we'll need to probably, I would expect nothing's gonna come out until everybody gets over the Doge.
Can I have a comment?
Budgets.
May I add a comment to that? We have a number of places in the county and in Jasper County as well that should qualify for opportunity zone status.
In Jasper County?
In both counties, Beaufort
Okay.
County and in Jasper. There are 2 on Hilton Head. I know 3 that are in Beaufort that I'm aware of. And I'm not sure about any in the rural areas or unincorporated areas. But they weren't applied for at the time opportunities opened up because folks were so busy thinking we were dealing with growth, they didn't really want to encourage it. The city was doing a redevelopment program. And that's one of the reasons that these developments up here qualify in an opportunity zone. The part I wanted to mention is the qualified application process, which is the QAP I mentioned from the South Carolina. If a project is going into a opportunity zone, today you get 5 points, make you more competitive than a project that may be going into Greenville or Spartanburg. That's important to float up to the top of the list and get those tax incentives.
Okay, so what I was gonna say is, it's a small world. I work for a capital markets firm in Arlington, Virginia, Manny Friedman. Manny Friedman came down here in his capital markets firm and invested in the Jasper port. Harry Williams, being the brilliant guy he is, he went to Manny Friedman and said, hey, you got a foundation. And they wrote him a check for $350,000. So there's all, and Manny Friedman feels, even to today, last September, he was at a conference and spoke. And he said, opportunity zone is where it's at in the capital markets. So if we can get more opportunity zones, I mean, I can help on the capital market side. Because there's a lot of, there's like Rick Hendricks who lives in Sea Pines. He has a capital markets firm in Memphis, Tennessee, which I've been trying to get him to come to Beaufort, come to Bluffton, move his company in Bluffton, right? I mean, you have a home on Hillhead, right on the water. Why not? So he has a capital markets firm, and there's a lot of other people I work with that have homes down here. Paul Fico and Palmetto Dunes has a home. He's in the capital markets arena, so, you know, this could, and I've been trying to get in touch with Senator
Graham,
Tim
Scott.
Tim Scott. But he's also, I think he's in partnership with Booker too, the senator from New Jersey, I think, in the opportunity zone. So, yeah.
Well, if I might just add to that,
Yeah.
if the county chose to take a look where opportunity zone qualifications could be met, I retired from the real estate business. I know it's my fourth retirement, but I retired from the real estate business a couple of years ago. If there's anything I can introduce anybody else or provide any assets to help you understand that, there are significant opportunities on areas in the county that would qualify. You have to configure them, you have to be ready, and then you have to be prepared to accept the development that they will attract.
Right.
And if anybody doesn't understand the tax benefits of opportunity zones, they're really available.
Right. And according to Manny, I mean, he was sitting in office one day in the 90s, early 90s, and said, you know, we can do this on our own. We don't need to work for some company in Bethesda, Maryland.
Yeah, well,
And they started their own company and made millions.
Yeah, the simple version is if you put $1 million worth of equity, either out of stock you sold or other real estate or just
Right.
into, say, a hotel or an apartment complex here. And it's in an opportunity zone, and you don't sell it for 10 years. And then after 10 years, you paid down debt and it sells and maybe your $1 million turns into $5 million.
Right.
You don't have to pay any capital gains taxes at the federal or state level on that $4 million. Which is a huge incentive. It's about a 5% increase in your annual internal rate of return based on the transaction you've seen. People go out of their way to find those things, so that's exactly right. What he's talking about with Chase and having to have a branch here, British Petroleum used to provide a lot of grants into South Carolina because they had a facility up in Georgetown. They no longer have facilities in Georgetown, so the person who manages that still lives here, but she can't bring any more money to South Carolina because they only invest where they have facilities.
Really?
Yeah, so everybody has a different policy.
Okay. All right.
We would appreciate anything that will help promote.
I'm inviting all these people again to the Heritage. We invited them all. I invited them all last year because I'm on the board of Southern Carolina Alliance. So, and they have a box there. So we invited them all, and two of them responded that they couldn't come, which was a good thing. I mean, it's sort of like, you know, farming, you know, so you plant the seeds and you have to wait for them to grow. But two of them, I think, will be here, and that'll be huge if they come. One was the CEO of Politico. So, we'll see. But yeah, I'm gonna make a list, and if you want me to,
That'd be great.
send me an email address, and I'll let you know who's coming, and
Sure, absolutely. Any other questions I can answer for anyone?
Any questions? And I think that it was Claude, right? Claude and Dick, that's probably one of the better presentations that I've seen. It makes sense and makes it understandable, because usually we're trying to catch up on things. So thank you for that, and I appreciate all your help and what you do and
Yeah, thank you.
being out to do that. And Dylan, I think you're gonna follow up with all this then?
Tough to follow
Gitt?
that, but
Okay.
yes, I'm Dylan, I'm a deputy county attorney. I've been tasked with bringing this amended IGA over the line, and we're excited to have that accomplished. And thank you to Mr. Stewart for giving us a bit of the history of the BJHT, and for Mr. Hicks for giving us an idea of what they're looking to do moving forward, and we're excited about the cooperation. So the actual resolution itself authorizing the administrator to amend the IGA among the municipalities is before us here on this item. Due to some of what Mr. Stewart discussed earlier with the history, with the fiscal agent, and with some questions regarding what happens to the funds upon termination or dissolution, we have cleaned up this agreement, and all of the changes to the IGA are set forth in Exhibit A, which is in your materials. There are 6 total changes. They are all contained and spelled out there. They pertain mostly to, again, substituting the BJHT Inc. 501c3 as the fiscal agent, some changes to the term and termination procedure, and then ultimately as well what happens to the funds in the event of a termination or dissolution. So we have these implemented in through our materials in Exhibit A. There is no fiscal impact currently, and we are very excited again to amend this agreement to allow us to fund it and to continue with partnership with BGHT. And I will be happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Any questions?
September 26, 2022.
That's the date that it was adopted, the
Oh,
initial.
All right, seeing no questions, is there a motion then to move this to county council?
I'll make the motion.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Any additional discussion? Seeing no discussion, we've moved this to county council without objection. Is there any objection? Seeing no objection, this will pass and move to county council. Thank you all for your work, and Mr. Hicks and Mr. Stewart, and
Thank you.
Mr. Kidd, thank you for your work too. We look forward to, as you get with us and get moving, that see more in front of us. All right, so then let's move on then to number 10, discussion of, I'm sorry, discussion of state aid tax review. Ms. Tabernick had asked us to put this on for a discussion. Do I have a motion for us to discuss this?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I don't want to move my own thing.
I'll second.
All right, thank you for a second. We will, without objection, we'll go ahead and open up discussion.
So the discussion focuses on, as you know, we revised the entire ATAX policy state and we've talked about local. There was a comment, or I met with Mr. Stewart. The city of Beaufort uses USCB to literally evaluate how their grant money is a good return on investment. Because if you look over those, I looked from 2020 through last year, we give out at least $1 million. Last year was much smaller. And there's really no evaluation of what return on investment we get. Some of those items to me were community events, which don't qualify as tourism if they don't generate people that come from over 50 miles away. So the question is, how do you know when something is worthwhile and going to generate more ATAX funds? We can't just, we have to be responsible for these funds and how they relate to return on investment. So I met with Mr. Stewart. As I said, the city of Beaufort, I believe, does this. And it's in your packet. I've asked Dick to talk about this a little. I'd like us to look into using this to evaluate how our grant money is spent. And is it spent in the best way possible to get a good return on investment? So I'm gonna turn over to Dick.
Can I sit at the table?
You can do whatever you want. And she has it in the backup, so. It's very interesting information. And we've never, correct Mr. Stewart, you serve on the committee, we've never really evaluated. What happens is people come, like Paula's group gets $50,000 to do a festival.
Oh, the Keep Beaufort County Beautiful?
No, I'm just saying in general.
Okay.
So they get $50,000 to do a festival, and at the end, they give us a little write-up. We don't really know, it doesn't really provide us good information. This would change that venue.
Thank you. I think you have this material in your packages. That's right. Okay, I won't go through it, but let me describe to you what they need to getting involved in this. When I came back home in '98, I was fortunate to have done well in the wireless business. We had a small family foundation, and we've been giving donations to various worthwhile things. In dealing with many of the nonprofits and the organizations that were doing events, we were getting requests. And we were funding some of those, as you have been and as the city has been and other people have been. And some of those things would be things like, we need parking spaces, and so we'd help them with that. Or in the case of Hunting Island, we helped them much with bathrooms. And we would get in the habit of going to follow up to see what had happened. And what we found in one case is where we funded the parking spaces, they improved the employee parking, but for the guests and visitors, the parking was still underwater every time it rained. We went to one place and they were going to improve the bathrooms and they improved the employee bathroom, but the other one, which they had two, one for employees and one for the rest of the people there. The other one was not in good shape. So what I found over time is there are a lot of very interested and passionate people that are involved in nonprofits who oftentimes want additional information, don't know what you're looking for to make them successful. So we reached out to see if there were mechanisms to do this. And the one that we were directed to was the one that Britain has been using for decades to evaluate what, say, Bath or Stonehenge or Westminster Palace contributes to their national economy. And so that led to evaluating whether something like that could be done here. What you have in your sheet is a series of reports on various organizations. I'll mention this one to you. This is for the Coastal Discovery Museum, a great place on Hilton Head. And here you'll see yellow, and in some places you'll see green. You don't see any red, but there is a scorecard in here that if you go between a certain percentage, you're yellow. Above a certain percentage, you're green. Below a certain percentage, you're red. Mitchellville was evaluated that year, and at that time, Mitchellville was a wonderfully historic site that looked like an open field and had no information associated with it. So if you arrived there, you might be disappointed. And the test we were applying is if a school group here locally, or grandparents with their grandkids, or visitors came to town and they want to see what was happening, what would they choose about the place? And so this evaluation system does have some things that on some organizations came in as red. I'm not sure if I included any of those here, but I'll
Yeah,
just
there was one in there.
Okay. One organization is wonderfully passionate about their topic, history. Unfortunately, they were open, they said, when they applied, 16 hours a week, 4 hours a day with dozens. Of the 3 trips I went there, they were open twice and closed twice, despite it being the day. I was told that that person had to go out of town, and so they weren't open on that day. For visitors and residents and other folks, it's a great place we live in, with a lot of history, a lot of culture, a lot of ecological risk. But when you get there, if the door's locked, it's not a good experience, and you lose confidence. This particular one was the Friends of Fort Fremont, and they got a low percentage because the staff of parent service and knowledge got a 0%. I don't know why, and this was years ago. And the cleanliness of the restrooms got a 20% rating, and that pushed them down. But they got a 61% rating on their social media coverage. And they rank things like, how does it look when you arrive? What's the retail experience like? Meaning, do you have something to buy? Do you have somebody to sell it? Are you able to handle the money? As well as things like exhibits. I've been to this museum, and I go every time there's a request for funding. And as far as I can tell, fewer than 10% of the exhibits have changed since I returned here in 1998, and they'll go nameless, although I suspect you have an idea in mind. So there's a short memo that it should be included in your package with a spelling error in it, so if any of you find that, it's completely my response. But what we've got is Beaufort County is rich in historical, cultural, and ecological treasures. These treasures offer the opportunity to become attractions for educating residents, children, students, and visitors. Some examples include Mitchellville, Altamaha Sound, which Councilmember Tab and I have talked about, Fort Fremont, Fort Frederick, Santa Elena, Mather School, Fort Royal Sound Maritime Center, Burton Wells Park, Widgeon Point Park, Crystal Lake Park, and others. And there are lots of others. I just looked last week at the Etowah Indian Mounds in North Georgia, which goes back to native days, and we're not sure why those mounds are built there, but there's a several hundred-acre state park that's funded around it, and it draws a lot of attractions from across the world, plus you see school kids out there picking. Our shell rings have all the historic significance of that, but we haven't explored them yet. We haven't educated people about them. And thank you for preserving some of them. So continuing, tourism is a major economic driver for Beaufort County. We think it's number 2 behind the military. Tourism generates accommodation taxes, just as Councilman Tabernacle says, and tax funds have been used to support the development of tourism advertising and attractions. So the opportunity. If you had a consistent, fair, transparent, results-oriented means of evaluating the impact of funding, that would improve its success and would attract additional funding from other private and public sources. There's the spelling error. What I mean by that is if you go to these agencies and you hand these to them, which I have done, the vast majority of them say, well, that's a really great idea. I had never thought about retail. Or I'd really thought mostly about keeping the staff happy, but I hadn't thought about the guests that are coming, including school. And I got to tell you, okay, you take a group of 2nd and 3rd graders out there and the restrooms aren't working, it is not a good experience. They're not coming back. And so the state, through various agencies and through some federal agencies, because of the significance of the history here, And as Secretary of the Interior Babbitt said when he came here and looked at Reconstruction history, he said, this is not a Beaufort County story, this is not a South Carolina story, this is an American story and it should be told. And that story resonates through lots of people for lots of reasons. And if my information is correct, that the number of people that have new residents in the last 5 years in Beaufort and Jasper County is 32%. There are a lot of people that don't know yet where they're at. They're here for a reason, but they want to learn. So there are funds available through other sources if there's a fair, transparent, consistent message. And my only complaint I've received from an organization when I handed them one of this is, well, if we're going green and really good now, does this mean you're giving money to everybody else? And the answer to that question is, I know you well enough, there will never be a day when you won't have a program you're looking to get started. So there will never be a time I won't expect a request, because the good ones do that. So the scoring system is used, which results in a green, all is good, yellow, some things are not good, are good, some are not, and red, lots of potential, but residents and visitors are likely to be disappointed in the experience unless improvements are made. On the CVB, we found that 55 to 62% of the people a couple of years ago come here looking for historic exposure. Somewhere around 45% of those people got what they thought they were going to get. That means of the 60%, less than half what they got. So that's 30% of the folks who could have had a great experience. If they told their friends, I want to go learn about the sheltering, maybe they stay an extra day in our hotel. Maybe they spend extra food in our restaurants. One thing's for sure, if they're not having a good experience, the people who live near there, the grandchildren, and the people who live here won't as well. It's a little like the Port Royal Sound Maritime Center. School buses are a great hit out there, and school teachers and parents love to take their children to that location. So the process is to get an independent group, such as the hospitality and tourism students at USCB who did these reports, and let them go out and evaluate it. If you go, or we go, our friends and neighbors will call up and say, well, you know me. So, but if you send those young students out here who are getting an education in this field, they're pretty independent. They say what they think they need. So there's a list of here. Is the story of the attraction communicated in an effective, engaging manner? Is the attraction open for reasonable hours? Is there an interesting experience for residents and visitors? Are there docents and interpretive volunteers? I went to a place the other day that was happy to tell me the docents were there and everything would be fine. And I can actually say the docent did look up from his book and did say hello. And I've known him for 20 years, so I wasn't shocked. I was the only one in the group he did speak to. Are there restrooms? Are there sufficient dedicated parking? Is there an effective board? There's a museum on Bay Street in downtown. The Historic Beaufort Foundation owns it. They get dinged because there's no committed parking. You got to find your parking, just like you do in that. That's okay. That's just a part of what that is. So sample reviews are conducted and they're attached. So the use of this is if those of us who serve on your county ATAX board receive application from these folks. If we had this review, we could talk to them about that. And what we know is the passion of the volunteer may not translate into the implementation of the plan that's going to get the best bang for the buck. So what we're recommending is that each cycle you allocate some amount of money and make that amount of money available for USCB, or if you choose someone else, to send these people out and survey 3, 4, or 5 of these sites. Not the same ones every year. There's absolutely no reason to do that. And if the sites want to pay you to have them come out and do that on their behalf, because you've already spent your money that year, that would be their choice. I would be suspicious if the site is hiring their own group to do the evaluation, not because it might not be wrong, but because there will be people who will be concerned that it might be wrong. So having an independent party that is focused on the big picture and has a mechanism where they look at this in a holistic fashion and can hand that report to you as a guide sheet for them to go where they want to go and for us to help them. I'll give you an example. Local entity I'm familiar with, they got a $2 million grant. We're not sure what they're going to do with it, but I am absolutely confident they're coming to ask for additional money from you and other folks. So how you can leverage your funds to see that that $2 million funds does something that's great would be helpful. There are lots of ecological and environmental attractions here that can attract different funds from different sources. So all I was suggesting is if you'll take a few minutes and look through this and put yourself in the position of saying, is this fair, equitable, and transparent to invest in the expenses people are going to have, experiences people are going to have here, that would be important. Now, the events that Councilmember Tabernacle was talking about often occur at some of these facilities that we're asking to fund them every year. And I get a little nervous when we're funding facilities. And I went to one 8 months ago, and we got a report that they had 8,000 people there over 3 days. Well, they had 2 toilets for men and 2 toilets for women. And I'm pretty sure that if you got 3,000 people a day coming through there, that is not going to be a pleasant experience, or they're not going to stay very long. Had another one where they do a great job, everybody loves it, and every restaurant in town hates it because they block the front door of the restaurant with a food truck. And we ask them why they do it. Well, people like food. I said, well, people sell food. Have you talked to the restaurants about having them participate? That didn't occur to them. So these are the sorts of things that, as a committee member, I would appreciate it if you could give us a better evaluation tool. Not taking too long, I apologize.
So just tell us about what is the cost of this?
Well, it varies because it depends on inflation and some things that we can't control. But at the time we did this, we paid for 10 sites, and I think it cost us $18,000 for 10. I'm assuming that if you allocated around $20,000 a year, you would get 4 to 5 each year.
Did the city of Beaufort put out an RFP for
I
it?
did it. I paid for it out of our family.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this was back when.
In our backup, we didn't get the sheets with the green, but
Oh,
we
you
did
didn't?
get, but
We just got the memo.
we just got the memo.
You didn't get all of this stuff.
I saw it.
We didn't get
Well,
that.
I just pulled it up.
Right. And Dick, is this Charlie Calvert's group that the?
It was John Salazar's at the
Not on
time,
the
and
agenda,
Charlie's there
so
now.
anyway.
But I'll just pass these around. I could have
Okay.
bought additional copies, take one or pass one, whatever you
I
like.
just pulled
They're-
it up
they're
off
multiple
our-
ones.
Agenda side.
Sarah can send it to
And she
everybody.
can send it to us, so.
Okay. And
Some of it was there, but not, I don't think just green.
it includes a description of when they arrive at the site, what they do and what they undertake, which is pretty helpful. And, you know, it's one of those things is when you read it, it makes sense and you begin to question what I have done before.
Does somebody do it other than USCB?
I'm sure there would, the College of Charleston would come down and do it with their group, SCAD, or somebody would come over and do it from Savannah. You can hire any number of folks to do it, but my experience has been if you get an academic group with young, kind of what I would describe as folks who want to make sure they get a good grade by getting it right.
And they're anonymous, of course, when they're going out, right?
That's correct, and they often don't tell you in advance they're coming. But it would be more expensive to bring someone from outside than it would be to do it here. But I think I would ask them to get that, give you that proposal.
If we use USCB, they're our partner in other areas, so would we have to do an RFP for this would be the question.
It's small.
I don't think it's a giant amount of money.
It's under the threshold.
Pretty neat.
We use small purchase procedures.
And it would be ATAX funds we would use to do this.
We'll have to look at that.
Okay, I know you will, okay. Brian's gotta keep it to the point, yes.
And will you send out a copy of the supporting materials?
Anybody have a question? It's a way for the committee and council to look at our return on investment. Because I'm telling you, some of, and I'm not speaking ill of the committee, but some of the applicants get it every single year. And are they really bringing in more tourists? Is it really a good return? I can't answer that. Yes, Pinky.
Has it been presented to the ATAX committee yet? State ATAX committee?
The state committee or to our committee?
Or whoever you're
Just start
speaking
looking
on
at
behalf,
that.
have they approved this request yet?
Let's talk about state ATAX committee.
We don't have.
I'm going by the title, it
Yeah,
says
we don't-
state.
yeah, we don't have a forum to do that in that committee, they're all in documents.
Yeah, that's not their charge.
But I've talked with 3 other members of the committee, they like to see it. One of those was the
Because
chair.
at the end of the day, the committee is the one who comes to council with the funding request, so.
Yes, and all the information they have is what the person stands up and gives them, which I sat through all of those.
What I envision is that probably the county, if we decide to do this, would be the applicant.
Correct.
Makes the application for the funds to be used for that. But I think it does have to go through the committee to expend ATAX funds. Every expenditure of ATAX fund has to go through that committee with a recommendation to the committee to council.
And we would use ATAX funds too.
Well, he's gonna find out if
He's
you
gonna
can
find
use
out.
ATAX.
If there's an application that goes through there, then this is a valid purpose to determine whether or not it's tourism related and the impact. That would be, we could support
Instead
that.
of general fund.
I mean, currently, and I said in the last round with the ATAX committee, and they were very focused on things, but they don't have anything like this. So I'm just gonna say, the Waterfront Festival, I'll just throw that out, not that that's one of ours, but is there really somebody deciding what's the return on investment there? Is it more a community event, or does it have a tourism draw? That's really what this is about.
Sounds like you're looking for an outside brief as far as the impact on the community, rather rely upon the applicant to talk about that.
Correct, because currently the applicant stands up and, well, you've read the applications. They look good, they make it look good, they put their spin on it. I can't tell you if that's right or wrong. This would be an objective review of the event.
Well, an event, if it lasts 5 days or, a full week, whatever, that's the event time. But if these attractions are continuing to improve, that's a 365-day thing. Because if you're gonna go there, and you're visiting here and you're gonna stay in your hotels, eat in restaurants, you wanna have a good experience. If you live here and you wanna go yourself or take your family members or your friends, that's a good experience. That educational experience translates into tax dollars is worthwhile. So if somebody's gonna do something, rather than something that's just exciting for 3 days and then you go back to not being open, doing something so that they can deliver a quality experience to the people who live here and the people who visit here and to the budget impact that presents is what this is intended to do.
Is there a way to say that one of these reviews has to be done, I'm just throwing a number, like every 3 years for you to apply for money from the county?
I'm not a person who could tell you what you could require. I would say that you could do that. My concern would be that if you then find that 30 people want it, you're gonna have to allocate more money to do more reviews every 3 years.
I don't think it means we have to, but I mean, for you to even apply, that should be one of the requirements, that we have to have somebody out there to at least see the facility and make sure that it's meeting up to Beaufort County standards or improving.
Yeah, I think the first thing we probably need to do that is to understand what those standards are. And there's some work to be done to make sure we understand that.
Yeah, but if we don't meet our burden, if we are the applicant and we are running that program and then we don't get the study done for those, we're gonna preclude them from applying, that's not fair.
I don't know that I would preclude people from applying, because if you only do 6 or 7 a year, I think we gave out maybe 30.
Yeah.
I'm just punting that. So even if we did 10 one year, which would cost us whatever, and 10 the next year and 10 the next year, what it would be is give us data for the ones that come back every single year. Like, we know the Beaufort Film Festival is gonna generate it, okay, that's a biggie. But do I know that Tab's night at the races or whatever is gonna generate it? We don't know that. And we sat through it. We get people that have a great idea for something, but it's gonna generate a community event. It's not really gonna bring in tourists. So why would we fund it if there's no return on investment?
Logan, you could, if council decides to adopt this and pass this, we could try to put guidance in there to the administrator that your target is to conduct a study at least every 3 years on these events. That'd be the guidance from council if you're gonna fund it.
I think we have 2 issues, and you're exactly right, one is, do we wanna do it? And then to what extent we wanna do it? And then the second part is where the money comes from to pay for it, whether it comes out of tax or we have to allocate money. So, I mean, this was all done for discussion. I think now we talk about what we wanna bring up at a future meeting of actually
Right, so
making-
my suggestion would be that Mr. Moore have his staff look into this. Do we wanna use USCB? Do we have to an RFP? I don't think so, it's a small amount of money. But where do we wanna go next? Because this is February, we're gonna start up the next round before you know it, and it would be great if we have some events that we funded last year coming up, we could maybe kick this into gear for a couple of those.
And I can see us, of what the tax is coming in to have a set percentage, whether it's 1/4% that we're gonna take and set aside to then go back and evaluate all the money that's come through. And if we have $1 million that year, that'll be $25,000. If we had $2 million, you'd have $50,000 if you did it by 1%. But I'm just thinking out loud how you could, if we're allowed to do it through an tax request.
I'm sure Brian will lead us in that one.
I got anything else to discuss on this? And then we'll look at whatever the recommendation.
Mr. Moore?
Who's the end customer? Is it the committee or is it council or, I'm just trying to understand.
In my mind, the end customer is the attraction because they're providing a tool to help them achieve what the public here, which is their clientele and constituent, is expecting, whether it's the resident public, the visiting public, the people who used to live here and come back. Their task is to provide a quality experience based on whatever the attraction is that they run.
So this report would go back to the
whoever's putting on the event, and if they're graded green, great. If they're graded red and say restrooms or whatever, then you need to go fix this before you come back again.
Right, the way that I think that has happened in other places based on the inquiries I've made is the other place come in and they've said, oh, our restrooms are fine, we always go before we leave home. So what we like to build is this pavilion over here, but when they get to the committee said, well, how about let's put the restrooms in first?
Yeah.
And that's the way that process has worked in the past, and I imagine it'll be just like that here.
Give them some feedback on
Yeah, and they'll know.
what our county ATAX or ATAX money's going for.
Right, and
Yeah.
they'll know very quickly that that's what's expected of them. That's why it's color coded. You don't have to do a lot of analysis to have to do that wrong.
And I think we're, just plain interpreter, you're talking specifically about facilities and offering on site. She's talking about the evaluation of events and expenditures. And I think between now and the next time we talk about it, we can kind of try to hybridize those things so we can do what I think.
Right, just
the
want
council
to
Look at the whole thing, yeah.
Right, we need to know what the goal, what the product will be, and maybe it can be a little bit of both.
Yeah, the goal is to get back to the individual
Did you see all this?
event,
There's lots of
or
stuff in there.
whoever's putting the event on, that's helpful.
Yeah, whoever participates in this evaluation, when we did it, we handed them the report, same time we got it, but I didn't have it.
But it's our report and we can share it with them, but we're paying for it.
Right,
To help
council,
you decide whether to continue to award them money or not, you and the ATAC committee, but you want to inform and guide the applicants to improve the project.
yeah.
That's how I see it.
I mean, I think it's responsibility to the public. We're doling out ATAX money, that's public money, and is it really a good investment? That's the question.
In the past, as you pointed out when we've talked about this, and you participated in some of these conversations, one reason we think ATAX has grown so much in the unincorporated area is we are getting a better bang for the dollars that we're spending on events and other activities.
Mhm.
The next round is here. Take Hunting Island as a place that's in the county. They used to come when I was on county council and try to get us to pay for certain improvements on Hunting Island. I remember one night we were sitting there at council and one of the council members said, don't you guys have a bunch of rental cabins? Yeah. Why don't you have some more? We'd like to have another 30 or 40. Well, what will that cost? They didn't know. I said, well, if the state will help you with those, we'll put some of our money in and help you with those. And you won't have to come and ask us anymore because you'll have all that income. And you could see it was like, well, we never thought about it like that. We were just trying to get these walkways paved, But that sort of conversation will take place. The nexus between the two is a large number of events happen in facilities that are a part of this activity.
Correct.
Penn Center's Heritage Day is one of their big events out there, but there are some facility issues that could be improved out there.
Say that again?
And traffic.
Penn Center's Heritage Day is one of their big events out there. I mean, there's some facility improvements that could make that a better event. Did I read that wrong?
No, I couldn't.
I was concerned you were waiting until I finished talking to come in, but I don't.
So, Mr. Moore,
Okay,
I'd like to see administration look into it. Hank knows about this. He could maybe be helpful. And then bring a recommendation to council or, however we want to do that. I think we need to do it for our state aid tax money.
and I think we're talking about putting it in this upcoming budget, so this would be for, I'm just trying to understand timing, this year or next
Well,
budget?
it's
It doesn't affect the budget if we're gonna do
Right.
ATAX funds, but you still have to have council approval to go forth with this, to direct the administrator to have the county submit an application to do these studies. So that's what you have to do. You have to take it to committee and get a recommendation as far as recommending that the contract for these services, and then send it to a council, and then get that direction from council to the administrator.
Pinky.
Yeah, that's where the confusion is I'm hearing that the county's putting in the application, but we're the ones also administering the funds for state aid tax. So we're gonna put in an application for state aid tax to manage.
All of the funds that are expended from ATAX have to go via the committee and
Right.
recommendation to council for approval. If you're gonna use ATAX funds, you have to use that process.
We might not be able to use ATAX, might have to come
Well,
from general
I
fund.
guess that's my question is,
If you wanna do it in the general fund, to pay for this contract.
How about local
you can-
aid tax money?
we'd have to check that new resolution to see if that's something that we can do. But,
Yes.
I mean,
If
I don't know how the county's gonna apply for funds that they're administering. I don't understand that.
county's applicants, for.
That's what they're saying, that we're applying for this money out of.
The local governments can
State,
apply
right?
for projects being paid for with those funds.
I get that, I know we're doing that, but what I'm saying is, it looks like we'll be the ones to submit the application on behalf of these reports being done, is that right?
Well, these are the details that we can work out before we come back
Right,
to the final discussion.
We'll look at these
Yeah.
options and
Right.
get back. But in terms of coming back to the committee or coming back to council, I guess that's
Come back to committee and then we'd make the recommendation to council where we'd go.
from the committee.
From the
So
committee.
staff will come back to committee with.
So, yeah, I was hoping it would go the other way because it's gonna be a month till it comes back to committee and then a month till it goes to council after that.
Well, and with all due respect, you
It's May.
understand that we as a staff are not.
And we have
quite on the
budget
same
in there
page
too.
with this, so I think we need to get a line before we
I know.
go to council on this.
Well, Brian has time.
He's got plenty of time.
Okay, it's up to you.
Good, thank you, Mr. Stewart. Yeah, and I think obviously for us, we keep trying to move forward with our ATAX is to prove that we're spending the money wisely, prudently, and that's our job, and this is a
Dick, you
good
want
way
this?
for us to do
I have
one
mine, okay.
more step in
Who
the
needs this? I
process.
have one.
She'll have to scan it.
Yeah, they're
Uh,
all in there.
No.
All right,
It's not in there.
I'm saying they have it.
Okay.
I don't know anything else.
nothing else on that subject, then we move on to our next, which would be number 11 on our agenda, and that's reappointment of Thomas Sheehan, Nicholas Meisenberg, Leslie Flory, Ann Esposito, Howard Ackerman, and Christopher Butler to the Airports Board for a 2-year term with an expiration date of February 2027. And again, this is what is being recommended by the board and by Mr. Rimholt. And these are reappointments, and they have met all their attendance requirements and are being recommended by the Airports Board staff liaisons.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
And is there a second, please?
Second that.
All right, and any discussion? There's no discussion. We're gonna again take this as one amendment and no discussion. Is there any objection to doing this? No objection. We will then, they will be approved and moved to county council for final appointment. And then number 12, recommend approval of the reappointment of Paul Jernigan to the Board of Assessment Appeals for a 4-year term with the expiration date of February 2029. Do I have a motion for that, please?
I'll make the motion.
And is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, any more discussion? Seeing no discussion, we will approve this to move to county council. Seeing no objection, this will be moved to county council. Is there anything else that needs to come before this committee?
I have a question. When are we gonna add Mark Feinberg to,
Some public facility.
oh, is that public facilities? I'm sorry.
Don't know the answer.
Okay, thank you.
Next,
Thank you, Alex.
next meeting.
Anything else to come before this committee? All right, good. I just want to point out that I had a 1-page agenda and then I looked at 3 pages.
And look at Logan's, yes.
Watch my 3-page agenda take less time than your 1 page.
Mr. Hicks and Mr. Stewart, you brought your application.
I didn't bring it up.